Hey guys, Ryan Fowler here with Tim Costello, Inner Game Group Live. Jordan is driving somewhere to Washington, I think. So he'll be here again next week. We have a great show. This guy, we're going to examine this clip. He is Harvard trained, Stanford trained. He was a doctor, chief resident at Harvard. And he's going to talk about trauma and how broad and how insidious it is. And actually, this clip is going to be very, very dense. And the reason we want to comment on it is we know some things he doesn't, but he gives a lot of good information.
Could you imagine?
Could you imagine? And that's the thing. That's why we have a show. Oh, Carrie, hey, what's up? Hey, P-Dubs, how you guys doing?
Hello, everybody. Carrie and the P-Dubs.
Starting a little later than usual because I hate my camera. But no, actually, it's an awesome camera, but it's so complicated. And if I get on the wrong setting, then I'm like scratching my head for 20 minutes. So before we get into that, Tim, introduce yourself.
Yep, I am Tim with clearthattrauma.com. You can reach me at tim@clearthattrauma.com. And one of the things that we actually, the main thing we help you do here at the Inner Game Group is regain your inner game you should have had from the beginning. The thing that was developed with your good parents, leading you and guiding you along the way so you can be your truly authentic.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Tim. And for those of us who didn't have the best upbringing, this will help you too. In fact, this is especially for you. And guys, just so you know, we aren't just giving you information. We actually give you tools to help you up level. So the link is in the description. You can see it right. Maybe you can't see the address, but MindChrysalis.com. This is our community. And guess what? It has free content. So go ahead and join. You click on Classroom right there. We have webinars and all sorts of topics, but we also have courses, and this is all free. So this is going to show you how to actually use self-hypnosis on yourself, which is what I've found 11 years ago. And I fixed a ton of stuff. I became much happier, much more confident. I doubled my income and then doubled it again. And it's because I fixed my inner world, and now I'm sharing these secrets with you guys. This is no charge at all, and it's actually six parts here. So all free, all you got to do, and there's a community of people that you can share things with, and people are very active on this board. And so school.com, it is school.com/mindchrysalis-7138, and it is in the description. I'm also going to pin a comment. But go there and sign up and try the free stuff. You can actually just change your life pretty profoundly, even with the free resources here.
Absolutely.
But let's go ahead and dive into our show. And Tim and I also, we do sessions with people and just massively up-leveling people. But let's get to the main part here, which is Dr. Paul Conti, chief resident at Harvard. I mean, he is the he's a psychiatrist, and he's a therapist for Lady Gaga, Kim Kardashian, Tommy Hilfiger. He has a great book I think it's called Invisible Trauma. And this is pretty dense and pretty eye-opening. So do you have anything to share about trauma, feelings of self-worth, anything before we dive into this, Tim?
So, let me preface this by saying that we're going to beat up the words of Dr. Paul Conti a little bit. However, this guy is one solid, knowledgeable, experienced, and just individual. Given the tools that the society has developed to this point, this guy is on the money, probably more than many people. He's up there with Huberman and Siegler and all those kind of guys, right? And probably in there with Carl Jung. That they understand the mind that much. The only thing we're going to pick on is maybe the lack of depth that he goes into this interview with Chris Williamson. And I get it, because you can only go so deep in so many minutes. And this guy's got a lifetime of research and experience. So what we're going to talk about is the impact that trauma has on self-worth. Now, you'll find in many of our shows, we talk about a number of things. One is Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. She was the very first Surgeon General of California. and she has spoken out incredibly about trauma. This trauma generally comes from your childhood. You can have traumatic events later on in life that may trigger feelings that were generated from beliefs in childhood. That's the trauma that we're talking about. We're talking about subconscious trauma, the programs and routines that run in your brain 24/7, 365, never stop. They're way ahead of your cognitive abilities as far as processing goes. That's what we're talking about. So when you have, and our friend Jordan, who's not here with us today, always loves the word maladapted. This word maladaptive means that these programs do not serve you. Mal being bad and adaptive being able to adapt to. So these things that we're going to talk about not only affect your self-worth, but they affect your health. And I think they're both very, very well interrelated. There you go, Ryan. We'll start it off there.
Yeah, awesome. Now I'll add to that, Tim, and then we'll watch the clip. What percent of people, some people have a lot of psychological, internal, subconscious trauma. Some people just a little. What percent of people have some whose lives will be significantly improved by getting rid of it? What percent do you think?
Well, 100% of the people on the earth have some level of subconscious trauma. So
exactly, because no one's had a perfect upbringing.
Yes, sir. Some people are debilitated to the point where they can't function in life very well, and they're hiding. They might be on prescription medication. They might suffer from addiction, abuse. Who knows what they're attracted into, right?
Tons of anxiety could be.
But even those people that function at even those people that function at a decent level can up level that level even more.
Yeah, I've had multiple salespeople take my course. One tripled his sales. Another went from second from the bottom out of 200 to number 7 out of 200. You know.
Yeah.
This is the core foundation. 95% of our behavior is based on our subconscious. So without further ado, let's dive into this clip, and we'll take it from there. Here we go.
Of us, and that it is insidious.
What do you wish more people knew about trauma?
I wish that more people knew that it comes so frequently to so many of us, and that it is insidious. And the meaning of that word, like something that is.
So let's break down what he's talking about. He very much broad brushes this stuff, but why does it come to people without them even knowing it? Because that subconscious program is running and it's looking for a match. So he said it's insidious. It's probably more persistent than insidious, because quite frankly, doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's running a program to try to protect. When it matches something that it recognizes, bam, there's the trigger. So like he says, it's all the time, and it's persistent, and it keeps on going and going and going and going. And then the minute something's matched, bam, it triggers out and pops. And that's what people struggle with. They almost act like they don't know where it's coming from, because most don't.
Yeah, and subconscious trauma, I think of it as like a fish in dirty water. A fish born in a dirty pond, that's all you've ever known.
That's right.
Is that dirty water. So this fish is like tired and its its gills hurt, etc. But it's all it's ever known. So it's just kind of in the background, doesn't have anything else to compare it to. So in many ways, doesn't even understand that it's there for many people, So we'll keep going.
Yep.
But then, man, when you fix it, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm doing so much better. And I've been through that. Carrie, your wife, has been through a lot of people. Jordan.
Absolutely.
Too. All right, here we go.
Sneaky and like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, it doesn't announce itself that I'm now in your brain and changing you, including changing your memories. So, and I don't know what happened to you after. And again, I'm sorry I didn't learn about what happened. But an example would be on the other side of that. A person who's gone through what you've gone through could conclude, I never feel safe in a car. I've never felt safe in a car. I don't like driving. Could conclude that without it being true.
Oh, so they've retroactively gone back and changed their memory of situations prior to that trauma as a compensatory mechanism, as a story they tell themselves?
Well, it's a way, because the brain is going to paint with a broad brush. If we're not bringing the trauma to conscious understanding, then it's saying, it's a very simple conclusion, right? Being in car, coming it up.
So he he said
Right.
two things there. One was that it just sort of comes out of nowhere, like it just happens. It doesn't just happen.
It's down there, and then you get triggered out of it's seemingly out of nowhere, but these subconscious programs and trauma are down there the whole time. They just
Absolutely.
get triggered seemingly.
Yeah, you're
out of
on the
nowhere.
money. They're running 100% of the time. So they're not hiding there like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that's a funny term because it doesn't make itself known and then do something else. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's trying to protect you. So it's, he uses this thing about riding in a car. If you were a child and you had a number of events in your childhood that made you fear riding in an automobile, then when the pattern is matched, such as we're getting in the automobile, you now become anxious and nervous.
You have fear in that context, whereas normally you're fine. That's
Correct.
getting triggered. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it doesn't come nowhere. It's running. It's looking for a pattern to match. When that pattern is matched, bam, whatever that response is triggered. Okay. Fight, flight, flop, fawn, whatever it may be. And then
But if we get the trauma out, then what happens when you go in a car?
Well, again, there's no emotional, you'll still have the memory of whatever happened before, but there now is no emotional connection. So,
and you no longer get triggered.
Yeah, you just get in the car.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going.
Opposite traffic is not safe. Right? And that's all the brain knows. Like, we got hurt doing that, so we can't do that anymore. So it'll bring that to you, and the emotion is so strong that it can color the old memory, saying, but you never wanted to be in a car anyway, right? You never felt comfortable. In fact, you don't even want to travel places. Like, it can bring these things to the surface. It's remarkable how many people will say, I never had faith or confidence in myself. I never thought I could do well at my job. I never thought I was smart enough. I never wanted to get out of my hometown. I never wanted to be in a relationship. People say, but when you talk to them, that's not true.
So now he mixes traumas because he went from riding in a car to not feeling good enough. Now, he mentioned some things about not wanting to be in a car, not wanting to go anywhere in a car, et cetera, et cetera. Just looking at a car could trigger you, knowing that you got to get inside that car.
For some people, yeah.
Yeah, for some people, and travel. If it does that, they have a likely belief that you don't want to go in a car. Right?
It's now what's much more common is what he's talking about now, because most people are not afraid of driving, but what he's talking about now is lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth, insecurities, all of that. That's what a lot of people have. So let's keep going here because this starts getting pretty good.
Yes, it does.
I'm not saying it's always not true, but in many, many situations, it's not true. It's the brain trying to keep them safe. But that's where the brain will, like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, like have you hiding under the bed all day to keep you safe, right? When that's
he's not exaggerating. We want to be able to
keep ourselves safe.
Well, some people will do that. Yeah,
that's correct. He's not exaggerating.
Trauma keeps us small. It keeps stay small, stay safe.
That's right.
And if you have trauma in you, and then people wonder why they can't up level. I always wanted to start this business, but anytime I start moving towards it, I just run out of steam, or I can't do it, or I'm paralyzed, or just, your wife, Carrie, had that issue. She tried to start all these businesses and could not pull the trigger. She'd ramp up, and then stop every time. How's her business doing now? We fixed her trauma. How's her business? Yeah, we fixed her trauma. Now she's running a business because she doesn't have that fear anymore.
That's correct.
And the fear, what do you think that fear was? And Carrie's probably listening right now. She said hi. But you know her very well. What do you think the fear was?
Her fear was not being good enough. And
what if I try this and fail, and then I feel like a loser? Something like that?
Yeah, because her parents forever pressured her into achieving something, one, that she really didn't care about achieving, but it was just important to her mom and dad. And two, that she fit society well. You have to dress like this. You have to talk like this. You have to act like this. You must carry your purse like this, because they wanted them to be in high society. And I don't think they ever really achieved high society, but they had great wealth and they had a lot of, very comfortable situations. But it reminds me, and if anybody knows and is British who is watching, there's a fantastic 90s era sitcom called Keeping Up Appearances. And it's a family of sisters that have these names by flowers: Hyacinth, Rose, Daisy, and I can't remember the other one. But anyway, Hyacinth was the lady. And if you ever, Ryan, I'm telling you, if you've never seen this show, you got to watch it.
I haven't. You're talking about before half of our audience was born, but hey, go ahead.
Yes, no question, no question. But there was
was
the
alive.
lady, and this is how far her delusion and her wanting to be in society would go. Her name was Hyacinth Bucket, Bucket.
Okay.
And she would answer the phone, Bouquet, Hyacinth Bouquet, lady of the house speaking. I mean, like, she wanted to give this appearance of wealth and affluence, but still lived in a little flat in a little village somewhere. And her husband was like a maintenance worker for the city. And, but she wanted to, put on this appearance. It's the same thing that Carrie's parents wanted to do. Now they had wealth, but they wanted to pressure because they thought that's what it was to be in society.
Yeah.
So that's what she suffered from. Long answer to a short question, but she was never good enough.
Yeah. Just one more manifestation of trauma. There's many. For our audience listening, anytime you're like, why can't I approach that attractive girl to say hi or get a date? Why do I have social anxiety? Why am I insecure? Why do I feel sad sometimes? All of that, why can't I stop XYZ addiction, sugar, or something more serious, alcohol, whatever. This is at the core of all of it. All of it. So 100%. This is why it's so important to address this. We'll keep going.
So maybe if you were in the accident when the road conditions were poor, that's why a snowplow was out, you might say, look, I don't want to be going against oncoming traffic if its speed is more than 30 kilometers per hour, whatever it may be, in bad conditions. Like, maybe you learn that and you're like, you know what, I take that away with me and I'm going to change that. You might conclude that, or you might conclude not that, but you're concluding something that tells your brain it doesn't have to be lost in that trauma. Now for you, it sounds like it went down after some period of time, but for some people it doesn't until it's processed. Like, again, person I saw earlier today, 20 something years ago, it is still with the person as if it were yesterday. And I see this many days, not just that I happen to see that today. It's like, I see that a lot, which is why I had a conversation about it just this morning.
So insidious, more frequent than people think, more persistent than people think.
And changeable.
Key.
And not...
right there. Changeable.
Locked, set it.
Right there. You can fix this.
Yes.
And what we do, guys, you can go on the MindChrysalis I was showing you earlier on that school.com platform, join the community, try hypnosis, start fixing yourself for free. You start fixing yourself for free. Now, a lot of people, want like a pro guide guiding them through their inner world. That's where we come in, mindset coaches, hypnosis, etc. Some people need that extra care. Actually, a lot of people do, but you can fix a lot on your own. Our brain is neuroplastic. You can actually pinpoint. We have a process. Go on the community, check it out. School.com, go in the classroom, watch the videos, do the worksheet, do the self-hypnosis. I just had a guy, I'm going to post a testimonial. He booked a half an hour consult with me just to say thanks. And I'm like, oh, great. What did I do? And he's like, I did your self-hypnosis. My procrastination was 9 out of 10. Now it's 3 out of 10 after listening to one audio, because he went in and fixed trauma. And now he's kicking more ass. He's not held back. He's not staying small, as far as his brain concerned, because of the trauma in him. His brain had this belief, I need to stay small to stay safe, which means don't do this, procrastinate it. He went in, he fixed it on the free stuff. So he scheduled a consult with me just to say thanks. And I got a testimonial, and I was unshaven. I'm a little unshaven now too. And so I look like crap, but I wasn't expecting him to say that, but it's like, can you share this with the world? So that's going to be up in a few days. That's like testimonial 25 now. That's the video interview on the website. This stuff is nuclear powered, and you can use it to fix all this crap he's talking about. It can be fixed. So
now let's talk about the gold standard of normal psychological help in the world.
CBT, cognitive
behavioral therapy, Wolpian therapy. That's where you're sitting around talking and trying to digest what happened, what's causing it, etc. And they may put you on prescription medication to deal with the symptoms of what's going on, etc., etc.
I did that on and off for 15 years.
Yeah, Ryan was there.
My manic depression and other stuff, which I actually fixed.
Right.
with the self-hypnosis. It
Now-
helped, but it took forever. It was slow.
Yes, it is very slow.
And then
So
it got fixed rapidly with what we do. Go ahead.
the gold standard of cognitive behavioral therapy with a broad brush is about 50% moderately effective. That means if 100 people show up, 50 of them will have some moderate level of betterment.
Mild or moderate.
Yeah, mild. Now Ryan
help at
did
all.
that. Yeah, Ryan talks about in his story where, you know, he did all this cognitive behavioral therapy, was on prescription medication, etc., and it helped him about what, 60%, Ryan?
Well, yeah. So I had very high anxiety. I had a lot of internal rage, anger, resentment, ton of insecurities, and then manic depression. It helped the depression over 100 sessions, helped the depression about 60%. The last few years of therapy did nothing. It didn't it didn't do anything for the anxiety, and maybe just fixed a little bit of the rage, not much. Depression and rage within like a month and a half, 2 months or so of doing self-hypnosis, all gone. All that stuff that therapy couldn't touch, all gone. And then when I actually found out how to use self-hypnosis for anxiety within a few months, that was, all gone too. Like, 95%, because we're not robots. We, fight or flight response, which causes, anxiety, dread, all of that. It's not going to get rid of it, but it's going to fix things internally. So now it's acting in a healthy manner. It's actually helping you, not hurting you, not holding you back. So once I figured that out, self-hypnosis fixed all that too.
Right.
Within 3 months.
There are healthy levels of shame in your childhood, and then there are unhealthy levels of shame. The unhealthy levels of shame is what creates those routines that run in you 24/7 to make you feel not good enough or don't belong or don't deserve what you want or you can't get what you want, et cetera, et cetera.
I wouldn't think about it as levels, more like types.
Right.
Don't do this. It's not acceptable to do this. Has a different character from, because you did this, it's evidence you're a bad kid or you're stupid.
Correct.
So toxic shame is tied to our identity, and that's where subconscious trauma is. I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm lazy. I'm ugly. No one likes me. When others reject me, it means I'm a reject. It just proves what I suspect deep down, that I'm not good enough, or when I fail, it just confirms that I'm really not good enough. That's all these painful subconscious beliefs tied to painful feelings. That's a subconscious trauma. But hey, don't touch the stove because you'll burn yourself, or you really shouldn't, run around naked in public. That's like, you can call it healthy shame or healthy guilt. But it's really has a different nature because that isn't tied to your identity or your worth.
Correct.
It's
it's actionable.
Don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in John Bradshaw's book.
Yeah,
like in John Bradshaw's book, he describes healthy shame and he describes toxic shame. And it's exactly what Ryan said.
Yeah.
Toxic shame is you being shamed for who you are or who you're trying to be or what you're trying to do through your identity.
Yeah, that's John Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You. And also Dr. Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy, wrote a book and talks about toxic shame a lot in that book too.
Yeah.
So, and this guy's talking about it here. You'll see. We'll keep going.
Yep.
In stone for the rest of your life.
It's not hardwired in us. We don't have to be afraid of it because trauma triggers a reflex of guilt and shame.
Right there.
There you go.
There
and that's the thing. Psychological trauma triggers guilt and shame. I'm not good enough. And that's why we talk about it so much, because guess what? Your surface level stuff, your addictions, your, depression and your anxiety, your procrastination, your self-sabotage, all that. This is the root right here. And what he's telling you is it doesn't have to be that way when you fix this root stuff. And that's what, we work on is, hypnotists, mindset coaches, life coaches. That's what we work on with people.
Now, this is key what he said. He said it's not hardwired. This is not a physical or genetic defect in your brain. This is software running in your brain that your brain has written to protect you.
That's right.
And that's the key. So when
Your
he
brain
talks
believes
about
it's
this,
protecting you with all these maladaptive behaviors such as addiction, procrastination, insecurities, depression. It thinks it's helping you based on these traumatic beliefs, but it's not.
right? And there
It's
are
hurting you.
reports that he's sort of implying that the drug industry has, foisted upon us since Valium on up, tremendous amounts of drugs that have not helped in the long run.
They don't do anything to resolve trauma.
Right.
They do
They
zero.
will help you deal with it. They will
Symptom
help
management.
you feel less worthless, et cetera, et cetera. There is a reason for those pharmaceuticals. However, like Ryan just said, it never fixes the flat tire. It just keeps pumping the tire up.
That's right. You still have that slow leak. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. We'll keep going.
So if
So we fix the slow leak.
we are traumatized, there is some reflex. And I don't know if you had that after your trauma. People say, I shouldn't have been where I was when someone attacked me or when there was an accident. Now, sometimes we may have bear some responsibility, but that's different than a reflex of guilt and shame, which tells you shove the trauma down below. Don't look at it. If you look at it, well, Lord knows what you will find. If you look at it,
and that's what all these maladaptive behaviors, procrastination, addiction, all of it is so that you don't have to feel that shame. Shove it down, disconnect from it because it's so painful. Our brain can't tolerate it. Our brain does everything it can to not feel this trauma. The problem is the trauma's in us and it gets triggered. So people do all these things to avoid the trigger or, get drunk, get just your dopamine fix, however, to cover up that pain or avoid it or just whatever. All this stuff we do that is destructive or keeps us from getting ahead is to cope with or avoid feeling this stuff, this very painful guilt and shame from being triggered.
What's the function?
Anything to add, Tim? Okay.
No, you're on the money. It's I mean, we're going to say it over and over again.
And our program, even the free stuff, or not everyone's going to be able to use the free program and fix themselves because they may not understand how to connect to their emotions or what their emotions need. Some people need a guide, but the majority of people can do the free training. And your brain is neuroplastic. You can actually go in and say, okay, this belief it's not right. It doesn't serve me. And you can actually tell your brain to send it away, and it actually sends it away. And we got proof after proof after proof after proof. Go to the video section on my YouTube channel, start watching the testimonials. And these people are like one session, totally different, or maybe 2 or 3, but just huge, 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 huge changes very rapidly if you know how to do it. Dr. Conti doesn't know the rapid way to do it, although he understands how everything works. He just doesn't have the methodology for the big, quick, rapid change that
Ryan
do. But he very well understands what's going on.
We lost your camera, but we hear you very, very well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, tell you what, I'm going to fix it while we play this some more.
There we go.
Of the shame and the guilt.
So the function is probably around behavior modification. Again, it's all theoretical, right? But if you think about psychological history of humans and even anthropological psychology, like how humans develop, that we have what are called affects. And I don't want to get too off into the weeds, but neurobiologically, there's a difference between affects, feelings, and emotions. And affects are just aroused in us. Like if you're just walking down the street and someone jumps in front of you and shoves you, you're going to feel anger or fear or both before you know it. Think about that. You're going to feel anger or fear, but it'll be coursing inside of you, and then you become aware. Why? Because affects they create change in us. If someone just jumps in front of you and shoves you or yells at you, you better be ready to fight, to flee, right? You boot up all these systems, and then you're aware. So these very deep affects in us, very primary, fear, love, joy, shame,
So
anger, they're created in us in order to protect us. So shame is very, very powerful for altering behavior.
Fixing my camera.
That's okay.
Yeah, my battery died, and I thought it was plugged in. It wasn't. All right, so rock and roll.
So one of the things he's talking about is the response, which is not. So your fight, flight, flop, or fawn response is not initially your subconscious trauma. It generally is adrenaline flowing around your body, blood flow being changed because you feel some sense of danger, etc. However, that could also be triggered by the subconscious trauma. You know, sometimes what he's talking about is when you get scared, it's a different feeling than when you're proceeding with something that your subconscious recognizes. The responses could be the same. Anxiety is a fight or flight response, right? You don't want to proceed into that operation because something may go wrong and you'll feel bad about it. So you're recognizing what you're proceeding into. It's not like somebody jumping out of a closet and scaring the crap out of you. It's a little bit different. Same response, but different generation for that response.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we'll keep going. Good points, Tim.
So imagine if you're in small groups of people and you've got the food inside the cave and you close the cave door, and then somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and eats a bunch of the food. The rest of the people may make that person feel ashamed, right? Or they're doing something that makes the supply at risk. Whether people are relieving themselves is tuning their food. Then shame is a mechanism of change. Don't do that don't do that again. It puts you at risk. It puts others at risk. So it has a very strong impact upon us, but it gets harnessed in ways that are not about survival. We're not living in a hunter-gatherer society where if you and I go foraging for berries and we almost die, we better never forget it, right? It's different from that. We live longer lives, right, that are much more diverse and can be impacted by shame in ways that can have a person who was attacked by someone else decades ago with no fault of their own still feeling guilty that they were attacked, ashamed that they were attacked, and deeply altering their behaviors because of that. That's survival mechanisms hijacked in a way that shuts down people's lives.
And that's survivor's guilt. Same thing.
So he's describing something that most people think that their reaction to a traumatic event is the trauma. It's not. Remember that
the trigger.
Yeah. Trauma is how you feel about something that happened to you. It's not about the thing that actually happened. It's about how you feel about it.
And the belief. There's always a belief tied to the feeling. The feeling always has a message, a narrative, something it's telling you, a belief.
Right. And those are developed in childhood. So if you have a traumatic event when you're 27 years old, what you're going to be doing is triggering something in your subconscious from your childhood. And it will be the exact shame, emotion, etc., feeling tied to whatever that belief has been triggered.
Yeah, and there's maybe 5% that can come from out of childhood, but adult, etc., very traumatic events as an adult, teenager.
There's always an exception.
95% really is childhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, we're painting with a very broad brush here as we're talking.
Very
and
true.
Everybody is a very specific individual.
Yep. All right, we'll keep going. Good points.
Trauma does not have to have this kind of control over us, but in doing what I do for a living, I've seen, the greatest external control mechanism upon us is the one we don't see that alters even our memory, so we don't even recollect accurately.
What?
He's talking about our subconscious.
Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it's so...
It's the most powerful part of our brain. Our subconscious processes 1,000 times more data per second than our conscious mind. It is.
And
so when people talk about just use sheer willpower, well, if your subconscious is counter to what your conscious willpower wants to do, guess who's going to lose? Your willpower.
And to display
your subconscious working for you. If it's working against you, your willpower only does so much before it loses.
Right. And to display what Ryan's talking about, Ryan, what percentage of our decisions throughout the day are made by our subconscious?
95%. Everyone, if you want to know, Google it right now. Just Google what percent of our behavior is subconscious or decided by our subconscious. Just Google it. You'll find articles by Auburn University, Harvard, they all know this stuff. They all know this stuff. The difference is they haven't figured out the most effective methodologies to fix it. Their stuff does work to a point. It does. And this guy, it's kind of like this guy, he understands the brain, but then it's kind of like his technology is like steam engine technology or like early combustion engine where there's nuclear fusion available, and he's like the finest steam engine engineer on the planet. But again, I'm just talking about his methodology to get people better. He's like the absolute finest, one of the most expert steam engine technologists. It'll get you from point A to B, but wouldn't you rather be in a, a jet or a spaceship that's nuclear fusion powered? It's just the methodology has its limits. And unfortunately, our medical community has not yet figured out, our mainstream community, because there's other people here, and not just me and Tim, there's other people here and there that do things similar to what we do and get big results, but they just haven't figured it out, man. Mainstream has not figured it out. Sooner or later,
the camera again.
Oh, it probably died, so I'll switch.
Okay.
But we'll keep going. I'll switch to my laptop.
Crazy to think that scenarios we go through become interpreted by ourselves and woven into a story that we tell ourselves about who we've always been.
Right.
Then the incident that was the genesis of that is not forgotten, but it's being the genesis of it is forgotten.
Right.
And it just becomes a part of us. And then people will begin to identify with that. Oh, that's me. That's how I've always been. I've always been an X or a Y or a Z person. And we all know how much people try to
I love that. I've never heard that description, and he said it best, and he's not even a professional, right? So he said that our brain, and Ryan, you'll talk about this, that as we write this subconscious program and that program continues to run, rarely do we remember what actually caused the program.
Yeah.
We just develop narrative or belief. We tie that to some feeling, negative or positive, and that becomes our routine.
Yeah, this all happens automatically, whether we cognitively think of it or not.
Correct.
Now, you can use your conscious brain and connect it to your subconscious and go down and figure out what's there. You can figure out what's there. It's totally doable. We do it all the time. But unless you really focus on it a certain way, it's there whether you focus on it or not. It's gonna get triggered and you're gonna react whether you consciously focus on that or not.
Right.
So yeah, I'll keep going.
Roll on.
Burp. Oh, it's on the wrong. All right, here we go.
Defend their egos and their personalities. If you tried to say, oh, why don't we go away on holiday? So, I don't like going away on holiday. I've never liked going away on holiday. No, you had a very turbulent flight when you were 7 years old or 13 years old or 25 years old, and this landing came in and you told yourself a story that you no longer want to go on. What I'm fascinated by, not only the fact that formative instances can change the story we tell ourselves about ourselves and then make us forget the fact that that is what caused it to happen, but that shame and guilt are almost like the delivery mechanism for enforcing the change. And it doesn't need to come from other people. You're right that you do a thing and guilt is the internal version of the external eye that your tribe would have had on you saying that you probably shouldn't be eating those berries. Oh God, I hope no one catches me. But you're deploying this to yourself, about yourself, and maybe about something that wasn't even your fault.
Yes, it's something. Yes,
and I gotta hand it. That's Chris Williamson. I gotta hand it to him. He gets it. He
figured it out, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I gotta hand it to him. He well put, Chris.
It's all of that. So you're really getting it's all of that, and it's even worse because that shame and guilt, all the things you just said, are like sentries protecting us from insight, protecting us.
They think they're protecting us, and in ancient times they did, but our brain is optimized for ancient hunter-gatherer tribes. We're in a different different environment now, and so in some ways it's maladaptive for our modern society.
Us from help that say it's not safe to go look at that. It's not safe to talk about that. You want to go talk about something you're ashamed about? That's not going to go well, right? It has us keep it all inside because guilt and shame keep us stuck inside of ourselves, which is the reason why people don't go and get help. They don't go and process because guilt and shame tells us to keep it private. And it tells us, well, people say all the time, I'll start crying and never stop. I'll curl up into a fetal position and never get out. That is never what happens. Those are the lies of trauma-driven guilt and shame that keep us in places where we not only.
That's never what happens. When you go inside and you look at all this trauma, this guilt, this shame, you never find out you're bad. You never find out you're powerless. You actually find a part of you that needs healing and you heal it, and then you claim your power. And then and you find this part of you that just needs comfort, support, love, acceptance, validation. And once you fix that, it changes everything. And everyone has this at least a little bit.
Yep.
Even the people that are normally very confident, there's still going to be parts of you that are wounded. Maybe not nearly as much as many others, but everyone has this at least a little bit, and some people have it just massively.
We don't know who we are, but we forget who we are. How many times I've had a person tell me, I've always been someone no one likes. And I learned, like, that's not true at all. This person understood themselves to be different and interacted in the world differently until that trauma happened. Because the thing you said about the airplane flight could happen when someone is 7, happen when they're 57 too. Right? And then we go back.
So what he's indicating a little bit towards is that if you are riddled with debilitating subconscious trauma based upon that toxic shame of your childhood, that you don't actually know your authentic self. And because you don't know your authentic self, you're concerned about how people perceive you, what they will think, whether they'll think you're a failure or good enough or pretty enough or dressed up enough, whatever the case may be. You're always looking outside yourself, some type of validation that you are worth something. And again, we've seen many examples
you may
of
know your
those
authentic
who cannot
self.
achieve that.
Yeah, you may know your authentic self, but just feel it's not appropriate or right, or it's bad or wrong. But some people are so disconnected, they're not even sure what that is. That's
correct.
True.
Yeah. Roll on, baby.
All right.
And we map the past, which interestingly, English modernism really captured this. So it's not like this wasn't known before, but the English modernists like Ford Madox Ford, Virginia Woolf's writing, really, there were others too that started writing about how we retroactively change. I think it was Ford Madox Ford who wrote about, if you're eating an apple and it's a goodly apple, I think you get to the center of it and there's a worm, is it retroactively a bad apple? Right? And that was quite a revelation that was part of the English modernist movement.
It's a good apple with a bad worm.
That really.
That's us. The trauma's the worm. Still good apples.
It could be a good apple it could be a bad apple with a good worm. Just kidding.
Realized, and
okay.
And in my opinion, I think Virginia Woolf captured it the most deeply of how time changes for us in the context of how we see things in retrospect, how we see ourselves. That the past is malleable. And it is our responsibility to ourselves that our past isn't malleable. If something changed in me after a trauma, I want to know how I was before, what that trauma was, how it impacted me, how it changed me, how I am different afterwards, so that I can decide what that means.
So generally, things don't change within you because of some traumatic event. What happens, though, is something is triggered within you. And then
as an adult, you mean?
As an adult, yeah, because that's what he's talking about.
That causes you to form a belief, and that's the inception of trauma.
It's good separation.
It can happen as an adult. It's just much more unlikely. It's, like I said, 95% childhood.
Right. So what he's talking about is nothing's really changed, but a lot of patterns were matched that brought out those things from childhood and now are triggering you.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of like combat vets who have PTSD, the soldiers who fare much better even though they've been in combat, and the ones who fare worse. The ones who fare worse typically have just a lot more childhood trauma, and it's getting magnified by all the stuff that happened to them in combat. And there's guilt and shame is a component of PTSD, very much so. CPTSD as well.
Yes,
and how I'm going to go about doing about it, whatever it is I choose to do.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Element. Element is
okay, and we'll leave it there. Sorry, no commercials. Well, let's see here. Yeah, it's pretty much the end. All right, so the thing I'm grateful for is the scientific community at least is waking up to what a massive problem this is. What a foundational I think his book, Dr. Conti's book, is called The Invisible Epidemic.
Yeah.
Saying this is something everyone has and doesn't even know it. And, Brene Brown, she's a professor at
Houston somewhere.
And then she's also associated with University in Austin. And she has 6 New York Times #1 bestsellers. And she focuses on like toxic shame and vulnerability and confidence and courage. And though that's like her specialty, she's considered world-class in that field. And she's like, everyone has this to some degree. And no one wants to talk about it. We all want to shove it down, push it down. But when you fix this, it your life up levels. It just does. Yeah.
Gabor
So-
Mate, same way.
Gabor Mate, again, another world-class scientist. He's a luminary. He's huge on YouTube. And I think even like Huberman understands this too. And like Dr. K, he has a YouTube channel with millions of followers. He talks about shame. He's like it's the most painful emotion we have. So they know, Sean Stevenson, when he was alive, talked about like, he goes to these prisons and he's like, the toughest criminals, they just want to be loved and they want to feel good enough.
Absolutely.
And it's really at the core of just such a massive amount of maladaptive behaviors. It's the number one root cause of whatever people struggle with psychologically. I won't say it's the only thing, but it's absolutely massive. It's the biggest thing by far. That's why the very first video I put on YouTube was about toxic shame, which arises from subconscious trauma. Yep. Yeah. So anything else to add, Tim? And you guys can fix this. MindChrysalis on the school platform. A lot of you will be able to fix it. Some of it you will need pro help. The do-it-yourself is not enough, but give it a shot because it probably will work for you.
So not only is this subconscious trauma stored in your brain as far as a program that is running, it is also stored in your body, and that's why you feel it. It does not leave your body until you actually clear this trauma out, and it can actually cause physical maladies.
Yep.
Right.
Causes inflammation. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's it's a best-selling psychology book for like 8 years straight.
Yep.
Your body keeps the score. And
your body keeps the score by Bessel van der Kolk.
Yep.
And it is a fantastic book. And he's even discovered, and he was a fellow who actually used prescription medication until he started noticing that nothing really changes.
Yeah. Well, it's a Band-Aid. It's symptom management. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, tremendous bunch of books out there. It's not just us talking about it. We understand how to fix it. We understand that if you can feel that trauma, then you can certainly heal that trauma.
Yeah. And we are coaches. We're not therapists. We're coaches, but
right. We are mind coaches. We get your mindset in the right spot. So let's just wrap it up with this. If you don't feel good enough deep down and you have those,
that's evidence of trauma.
Right. If you feel like you don't belong to a family, to even yourself or to a group, and you feel like you couldn't belong even if you wanted, that's evidence of subconscious trauma. If you can't get what you want as hard as you try, or when you do get what you want, you can't hang on to it because you feel like you don't deserve it, that is evidence of subconscious trauma. If you don't feel safe or secure, and that's pretty nuts and bolts, that's evidence of subconscious trauma. And on top of that, the last subconscious trauma really is a result from all of the other traumas being inflicted upon you. And that is some type of trapped or harbored rage, resentment, or anger.
Bitterness. Yeah.
Yeah. All that stuff.
Regret,
and
disappointment.
It literally eats you alive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. Tim and I don't fix anyone. We show people how to fix themselves. Like when I found self-hypnosis, we do hypnosis and, we have self-hypnosis products. There's the free stuff. But when I started fixing my internal world, it was self-hypnosis. It was me listening to an audio tape of a lady speaking me, guiding through me through a process to go inward. But I was doing the work. I was healing myself. It wasn't this power. The audio was just showing me what to do to go inward and do the work on myself and then fix myself. So that's what you do. You can literally go in and fix yourself. These struggles, it doesn't need to be this way. You can fix it because you do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you.